If you're a fan of the animated classics like I am, then King of the Hill has probably already earned a prime spot in your heart and on your lawn. This isn't just a show about selling propane. It's a deep dive into small-town life with dry humor, offbeat characters, and moments that make you go, yup. So grab yourself a cold one, and let's fire up the grill. Ready? Let's do this. Welcome to Arlen, Texas, a place where the lawns are pristine, the barbecues are constantly lit, and everybody knows Hank Hill. Hank's not just any guy, he's the propane guy. With a love for tradition, his lawnmower, and keeping things just the way that they've always been. He's a walking manual for the all-American dad. Practical, hardworking, and maybe just a little bit too into propane. Then there's Bobby Hill, Hank's pride, joy, and an internal enigma. This kid couldn't care less about sports, hunting, or anything remotely manly. Instead, Bobby's busy perfecting his comedy routine, rocking his unique style, and occasionally making Hank question everything he knows about parenting. And of course, we've got Peggy Hill, the self-proclaimed queen of the Hill household. Peggy's got big opinions, bigger confidence, and a not-so-great handle on Spanish, but she's the glue that keeps the family together, even when Hank and Bobby are butting heads like two longhorns in a Texas rodeo. That's the Hill family in a nutshell. Heart, humor, and propane. We start with Hank Hill trying to bond with his son Bobby through a good old game of baseball. Hank's all about teaching Bobby the right way to be a man, but Bobby, well, he's not really feeling the baseball vibe. The struggle between father and son begins, and we see that Bobby is far from the tough guy Hank wants him to be.
You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs, and you can't get on base without taking a swing.
But the real drama kicks off when Bobby gets hit in the face with a baseball. Hank's reaction, classic panic mode. Bobby, on the other hand, doesn't seem to mind one bit. He's got a black eye, but he's cool with it. Typical Bobby. Soon enough, the black eye gets the attention of the entire neighborhood, and before you know it, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Child Services gets involved. Hank's trying his best to cover up the situation, but his nervousness just makes everything worse.
Yeah, well, we would have liked to have more kids, but Hank has a narrow urethra.
Peggy
Isn't as worried about the black eye, but Hank is spinning out, thinking it's the end of his parenting credibility. Hank is trying to put on a calm face, but the social worker isn't buying it. Eventually, Hank's sincerity shines through. After some awkward moments, lots of nervous energy, and heart-to-heart talks, which Hank is apparently very bad at, all is well again. Hank breathes a sigh of relief, and the Hill family ends up back on solid ground.
He punched him! I knew it! I told him! Did you see that?
In this episode, Hank's neighbor, aka besties, Boomhauer, Bill, and Dale decide it's time to turn Bobby and his friends into real men by taking them on a wilderness survival trip. To kick things off, they call in John Redcorn for some authentic Indian culture.
Spirit bags, Wimatanya, funny-looking headband.
Redcorn introduces them to Wimatanya, a sacred ritual that involves, well, we're not really sure what, but Hank and the gang are all in. The crew heads out in the cars, Hank and Bobby in one, Dale and Boomhauer in the other. As soon as the family leaves, Peggy is all like, "Oh, freedom," and sneaks off in Hank's truck for some me time.
Give me a little pressed ham!
Hank, ever the disciplinarian, declares a 24-hour vow of silence for the boys, using Slim Jims as silent sticks. Bobby, of course, can't handle the pressure and takes a bite of his Slim Jim, ruining his shot at straight arrow status. It's just one of those dad's gonna be disappointed moments. They finally reach the campsite, and Hank, now calling himself Kicking Elk, tries to inspire the boys with a story about the Wamatanye spirit respecting all creatures. Naturally, this leads to Hank sending Bobby and the others on a hunt, because why not send kids into the wild to hunt an imaginary creature? Classic Hank. Of course, Bobby's aim is so bad that he accidentally knocks out a rare whooping crane instead.
There's only 5 of those left in the world. Well, 4 now.
Hank hides the evidence in a beer cooler, thinking he's pulling a fast one. Meanwhile, Peggy is off living her best life buying shoes from Brock, a guy who specializes in large-footed lady footwear. Yes, you heard that right. They exist. As the park ranger shows up to investigate the missing crane, Hank scrambles to cover his tracks. In a twist that will surprise absolutely nobody, Hank admits to Bobby that the whole snipe hunt was a scam to teach the boys a lesson. Just as things are looking grim, the crane magically wakes up, saving Hank's butt at the last minute. In this next episode, Luann's saga, Hank's peaceful den is invaded by his ever-favorite niece, Luann, and her heartbreak. And her other stuff. After Buckley dumps her a mere 30 yards from the Hill house, very classy, Luann spirals into full soap opera mode, constant crying and yelling. Hank, naturally awkward when it comes to emotions, tells her to stuff it all down, and vows to find her a new man in 48 hours. Cue an ill-advised matchmaking mission at Ugly Saloon. While Hank scouts for a belt-buckle-approved suitor named Wade, things backfire when Wade turns into Mr. Grabby Hands, and Boomhauer steps in to save the day. Plot twist, Luann ends up dating Boomhauer, leaving Hank horrified. Peggy tries to mediate, reminding Hank he's all gruff on the outside, but soft on the inside when it comes to Luann. Eventually, Peggy engineers a coincidental family reunion at Luby's, and Hank realizes he wants Luann to stay. He redecorates his den with her things, turning it from his sanctuary into a tribute to barely concealed feelings. Luann melts, telling Hank she loves him.
Beer?
Yep.
In this episode, Hank's bathroom habits become the talk of the town when Peggy catches him leaving without flushing. Hank insists, "I didn't do anything." But Peggy's concern grows. She whips up some Metamucil, but Hank, being too manly for fiber, chooses sausages over bran muffins. Peggy, desperate for solutions, shares Hank's digestive difficulties with Nancy. And before long, the whole neighborhood is offering unwanted advice. Word spreads fast.
You know, I've been thinking about y'all and y'all dang old bottom and all what's gonna get moving again. I think y'all ought to go jogging and swim in the water.
How to get regular becomes Hank's unofficial town slogan. In true Peggy style, she tries sneaking laxatives into Hank's ice cream, but it's a no-go. And neither is Hank. Hank's constipation becomes Peggy's worst nightmare when she dreams that he dies of it. And there goes Peggy's frantic, "I can't lose you, Hank." We've all been there, Peggy. Hank, still embarrassed, finally agrees to see a doctor, then goes awkward medical procedure.
Bobby, put that down. You do not know where it's been, honey.
Enter Tasha, the beautiful medical student, and Dr. Morley, who sticks a sigmoidoscope where no one wants it. After an uncomfortable procedure, Hank's low-fat, high-fiber diet is blamed for his troubles. But Peggy insists it just needs more time. After several failed attempts, bacon grease, tofu dogs, acupuncture needles, Hank gives in. He tells Peggy he'd rather die with a burger in his colon than live without real food.
Wait here.
Peggy, touched by his honesty, agrees and assures him that she loves him. And then, hallelujah, Hank finally gets some relief. A simple flush echoes through the house, and the Hill family shares a triumphant hug, set to ode to joy. Wow. Now, speaking of chaos, as in Hill family kind of chaos, when a moving van pulls up next door, Hank and the gang get all starry-eyed, seeing a rugged, all-American dude hop out with his son. But plot twist, he's just the mover. The real neighbors, a Laotian family, arrive in a minivan. Enter the Supanusenpones. Con, his snarky wife Min, and their sarcastically sweet daughter Connie. Hank, channeling his best neighborly vibes, introduces himself, despite having his Texas-sized jaw drop in disbelief.
Con, please, for once, try not to piss off neighbor.
At a Hill family dinner, Peggy serves her famous Brown Betty dessert, treating it like a state secret. Min says it's nice, but it could use nutmeg. Oof. And it doesn't stop there. She throws shade at Peggy's big feet. The drama escalates when Con's terrier Doggy tries to romance the Hill family's purebred Georgia bloodhound named Ladybird. Hank is not having it, claiming Ladybird should stick to her own kind. Con claps back, calling Hank a narrow-minded redneck. Later, Min hosts a barbecue and casually flexes on everybody by improving Peggy's Brown Betty recipe. Peggy's fuming. Meanwhile, Bobby and Connie team up to chase after the runaway Doggy. The burger drama begins when Hank tastes Con's grilling masterpiece. The best damn burger he's ever ate. Dale, naturally suspicious, spots Doggy's leash lying empty and decides it must be a dog burger.
Con served you dog.
Con did not serve us dog.
Hank spirals, thinking Con cooked Doggy, and eventually Ladybird too. Now Hank, armed with righteous fury, bangs on Con's door demanding justice for Ladybird. The truth comes out when Bobby and Connie return with the runaway pets. Whew. Crisis averted. Both dads ground their kids and bond over their identical parenting method. Cue the credits. Peggy seeks cooking tips from Min, but skips the nutmeg for rabbit stew, which Min, rightly, labels disgusting. When Bobby's invitation to Grandpa Cotton is returned to sender, addressed to Hell, USA, it sets the tone for a hilariously chaotic episode. Peggy insists that she only called Cotton evil, not the devil, but Bobby connects the dots, because, let's face it, Cotton is exactly the poster boy for kindness. On Bobby's big day, Cotton makes his grand entrance in a Cadillac towing a horse.
I love it, Grandpa.
Well, you can love it for 4 more hours. It's a riddle.
But as for his real gift, a 20-gauge shotgun. Because when it comes to grandparenting, subtlety isn't in Cotton's vocabulary. Peggy confiscates the gun, but Cotton still steals the show by literally blasting the birthday piñata to smithereens. Bobby's having the time of his life. Peggy's spiraling into her worst nightmare, and things take a turn when Cotton crashes his car on purpose to stay longer. Now, Peggy here investigates and discovers the real culprit, a stolen plunger hidden in Cotton's pants, which he removed to disable the car. He's basically a one-man wrecking crew. But the real chaos starts when Cotton takes Bobby to a bar and teaches him the moneymaker technique, a slap on the waitress's rear to speed up service. Unfortunately, Bobby's all in on these outdated lessons, even testing them on Peggy, which naturally lands him in hot water. Things escalate hilariously and horrifyingly when Cotton tries to buy Bobby a prostitute, only to find himself at a convention of female trial lawyers.
So I'm buying you a hooker. Go ahead, pick yourself out a live one.
A live one what?
Hank's had enough. In a standout moment, he confronts his father, declaring, "My son's not grown up to be a woman-hating old fool." Bravo, Hank. The episode wraps with Hank showing Bobby the importance of respect over milkshakes served by roller skating waitresses. Well, baby steps, Hank. Baby steps. In this next episode, Peggy's on a roll when she crushes Min, Luann, and the kind neighbor Nancy in a friendly game of Boggle. After winning easily, Nancy suggests that she join the Boggle tournament at the Elks Club, which Peggy does, winning a trophy and earning a chance to represent Arlen in the state championship.
Don't miss the Dallas Mower Expo! Be there!
Hank, meanwhile, has his sights set on the Dallas Mower Expo and promises Peggy he'll coach her. But it's Hank, so you know that's not going to go smoothly. In Dallas, Peggy faces off against Sissy Cobb, a seasoned Boggle champ who wastes no time mocking Peggy's Arlen Boggle Booster's jacket. Peggy's shaky start has her ranked second to last, ahead of a chicken. But she's no quitter, so she powers through, determined to prove herself. Hank, tempted by the Mower Expo, ditches Peggy to hang with his buddies.
I got a pretty good dang old idea what's going on. I tell you what, man,
But once Peggy starts rising through the ranks, Hank can't help but feel guilty. When she reaches the finals, she faces off against Sissy again, but Hank rushes back just in time to hand her her lucky pencil. With newfound confidence, Peggy wins the Texas State Boggle Championship. Back home, Bobby and Luann break the house while minding things. Hank, unaware, thinks the cleanup crew is there for a party, so he grounds Bobby and Luann, thinking they went back on their word. In this episode, Luann is furious when she catches Ladybird munching on her cruelty-free makeup. Meanwhile, Bobby and Dale's kid Joseph find a pristine, unsmoked cigarette in a dumpster and sneak off to light it up in a men's room at a gas station. Cue dramatic entrance. Hank busts in and sees Bobby with a cigarette. Now Hank, in his unquestionable parenting style, forces his kid to smoke an entire carton to teach him a lesson. As Bobby struggles to survive the cigarette mountain, Hank grabs one too, like the bad role model that he is, and immediately gets hit with a wave of nostalgia and relaxation. Who knew smoking would bring back such fond memories for him?
I think I'm gonna barf.
That's what I wanted to hear. Good job, son.
Later, Hank tries to play it cool with Peggy, claiming Bobby didn't finish the carton, while he still sneaking smokes behind her back. Meanwhile, Luann is busy scaring Ladybird away from her precious makeup with a genius trick, a canister of pennies. The Hill family's dirty little secret is out when Bobby realizes his parents are now smoking buddies, so they attend a cigarenders meeting. But Hank storms out because it's just too much. Luann locks the family in a room together to force them into quitting, because locking people in rooms always works.
Okay, women and children first. I take the first puff.
A chaotic shuffle ensues over the last cigarette, but Peggy finally steps up and throws it out the window. They make it through a night of withdrawal, leaving the smokes behind. At least for now. Seriously, don't smoke, guys. Which brings us to the next season. Now, in this episode, Hank Hill's idea of quality father-son bonding is simple. Go to the state fair, shoot some ducks, and get a prize. Except Bobby, who can barely hit a target with a potato gun, proceeds to become a duck-shooting prodigy. That's right, Bobby Hill, the kid who can't catch a ball, just got his name on the mechanical duck leaderboard. Hank's chest swells with pride, and suddenly, buying Bobby a shiny new rifle at Megalomart seems like a great idea, because nothing says, "I'm a good dad," like a dangerous weapon. Fast forward to the shooting range where Bobby's nailing bullseyes like a tiny, non-threatening Terminator. Hank, eager to prove that he's not a total disaster, picks up the gun, and suddenly, it's like his hands forget how to hold a rifle. And there goes the flashbacks to Cotton Hill, Hank's emotionally abusive father who treated Hank's first gun lesson like it was a military boot camp. No wonder Hank's shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. In a desperate bid to destroy Bobby's new hobby, Hank enrolls him in a safety course, hoping that'll suck all the fun out of shooting. Surprise, Bobby actually loves it even more.
So, do I lay the magazine?
Hey, look at this! Look at this, everybody!
So Hank does what any rational father would do. He drags Bobby to a range at 5 a.m. to avoid embarrassment. Enter Dr. Philip Nye, a sports psychologist who promises Hank mental focus will solve all of his problems. Hank's like, "Sure, bud." As if a guy named Nye is going to fix decades of daddy issues. Tournament day arrives. Bobby hits his mark. Hank misses. But hey, Bobby's pumped for second place, and Hank finally realizes it wasn't about winning. It was about not embarrassing himself in front of Bobby. But maybe with a little less psychological baggage and a lot more therapy. Hank's day takes a turn for the worse.
Morning, hun.
Morning, Uncle Hank.
When he realizes Luann has washed his prized undergarments with hers. You just don't do that to a man's boxers, especially Hank Hill's. The disaster spirals even further when a bill collector shows up revealing Luann owes 6 months back rent on her trailer at Shiny Pines Trailer Park. Hank, in a rare show of tough love, decides to fix the trailer by using a winch to right it. As if that wasn't enough, he gives Luann his business card, complete with a 10% propane discount. Wow, that's gold. Luann's crying, Hank's stone-faced, and Peggy is fuming. Peggy's emotional plea ends with Hank telling her to go to hell. You know, normal husband stuff. While Peggy drives Luann to the trailer park, a weather alert pops up warning of a tornado. Hank's sudden concern for Peggy sends him into a full panic mode, and after some car trouble, he finally makes it to Megalo Mart to buy an emergency fuel filter. Meanwhile, Boomhauer and Dale are off chasing the Twister for fun, nearly launching a pesticide barrel into the air.
Come on, bring it on! Ah! No, please, let me go!
Hank really loses his cool at the roadblock, which is so Hank Hill that it hurts. He floors it, determined to get to the trailer park, where the tornado is now closing in. In a heroic and possibly reckless move, Hank runs through the trailers, but Peggy's already safe in a shelter. The tornado hits, but Hank's clothes don't stand a chance. In the end, Hank's left standing in women's clothes, holding a cactus like it's his last shred of dignity. Luann's trailer's destroyed, but she's staying put. A tornado couldn't blow her out of the Hill household. How ironic. Hank's underwear, however, are now an air-conditioned flag of failure, dangling from the wreckage. It's just a regular day in Arlen, and Hank is thrilled to show off his shiny new rototiller. But when the blade hits something buried, it's not just a rock, it's a bona fide Indian arrowhead. Peggy, ever the archaeological expert, calls it a significant find. Fast forward to Hank digging up a second object, and John Redcorn declaring it a sacred tool worth $50. This sends Hank straight to a university where Professor Lerner crushes Hank's dreams of historical fame by offering a measly $10. Oh, but Lerner secretly keeps the arrowhead. Shady? Absolutely. Soon, Lerner and his grad students invade Hank's precious lawn, transforming it into a protected site, thanks to Peggy signing some papers without reading them.
After referred to as dang old aforementioned antiquities pursuant to the public domain Title 9
Naturally, Peggy gets charmed by Lerner's fancy academia, and when he gives her a replica bracelet, Hank's jealousy flares. In true Hill fashion, Hank buries a fake Indian necklace to embarrass Lerner, but Peggy finds it first and gets publicly humiliated by Lerner when her bone necklace theory is mocked. Lerner smugly tells Hank he could have seduced Peggy for a fake bracelet. Hank snaps, shoving the professor into a pit, soon joined by Peggy and Bobby. History lesson? Don't mess with the Hills. In this episode, Hank and Bobby are digging for worms, with Hank going full dad mode, ranting about cheater bait, like it's the ultimate fishing sin. Just as he's preaching the sanctity of worms, a guy is trying to hotwire Hank's truck. Hank tackles the criminal, Billy Ray Walters, and gets him sentenced to live in an import truck cab for 3 months by the eccentric judge Roland McFarland. Who needs a real judge when you have McFarland's unique justice system? Hank's truck is now dismantled at the impound because apparently Billy Ray was also hiding drugs inside of it. Hank's stress level hits 11, so he resorts to fishing with the guys. While Hank clings to his worms, the other use cheater bait, store-bought stuff, and they reel in fish like it's a tournament. Hank catches nothing. Classic. Enter layaway Ray's bait and tackle. Ray's burning his shop down for the insurance money.
Hey, I know. You ever hear of a guy named Jack?
But the street dealer hands Hank crack cocaine. Hank Hill buying drugs for fishing. The world is officially upside down. Hank hits the water with his new bait, and the fish go nuts. His friends beg for some, but Hank's got the bait on lockdown.
This is natural bait. Homemade in the USA.
It's like the last cookie at a party. Eventually, Hank catches the same fish over and over, and when he tries to ditch them, they keep leaping back in the boat. Hank turns into a paranoid, bait-hoarding maniac, and even chases Dale off with a weed trimmer. In the end, Hank realizes that he got greedy, and learns that good old worms are the way to go. His last fish is tiny, but hey, at least it's a fish.
Hold her up, Hank. She's a wall hanger. Heap.
And he gets to avoid jail time. As for the moral of the story, just stick with what works. Unless it's crack cocaine, then Then don't stick with that. In this next episode, Hank faces an unusual challenge. When tasked with impressing Mr. Holloway, a Bostonian with a cliched cowboy fantasy, Hank reluctantly buys tight boots and a giant hat to play the part, while Peggy dons a rangerette outfit for a cringeworthy dinner. Things spiral when Holloway ditches the steak challenge to hit a strip club with rival Thatherton.
And more. Please, ma'am, I'm trying to carry on a conversation.
Determined, Hank pitches propane at Jug Store Cowboys, but snaps after Holloway mocks his drink delivery. A heated exchange ends with Hank rejecting Holloway's business, only for Mrs. Holloway to later award the account to Strickland Propane. Hank's honor saves the day, cowboy boots and all. Ah, Christmas. Family, cheer, and Hank walking in on his mom's kitchen escapades. It all starts when Tilly brings home her new beau, Gary Kastner. Hank's discomfort is instant, mainly because his mom's relationship now involves his house. His genius plan? Stick Tilly in the den with Luann and banish Gary to Bobby's room. Crisis averted. Or so he thinks. Later, when Hank sees something he really shouldn't, hint, it involves Gary, Tilly, and a certain kitchen table, his brain goes, nope. And he literally goes blind.
Hey, Hank, what am I thinking? You can't see.
Peggy tells him to confront his trauma. Hank chooses to run to Cotton's house. Gary, surprisingly unfazed, drives Hank everywhere, even to Cotton's, where he shuts down Cotton's bitter rant about Tilly.
All right, I'm backing down. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Gary's love for Tilly somehow works magic on Hank, who starts warming up to him. The duo ends up at a televangelist service, and as Gary declares his devotion to Tilly, Hank's eyesight miraculously returns. Just in time for a very Hank Christmas dinner, complete with Bill, Dale, and Boomhauer teasing him for his ordeal. And as for Hank, it's still the best Christmas ever. Because nothing brings family closer than an awkward mix of faith, love, and really bad timing. Now, in this episode, Peggy steps in to fill a sick teacher's shoes at Tom Landry Middle School, and things get awkward. The class reenacts the Mexican-American War, starring none other than Santa Anna's prosthetic leg. The kids don't care about the history. They're just in it for the costumes. Peggy's thrilled, but the students are like, can we shoot something instead? Back at the Hill House, Cotton's relationship with Dee Dee has crashed harder than his driving record. He needs an eye exam to renew his license, but Hank makes sure that that doesn't happen. So naturally, Cotton moves in with Dale. Dale, being Dale, crafts a fake driver's license out of a Cheerio box. When Cotton crashes his car and slaps a cop's butt, Hank gets stuck with him.
Expired. It's not even real. Made out of the back of a cereal box.
Hank, trying to fix the mess that he created, asks Cotton to chaperone Bobby's museum field trip. Cotton, thrilled, goes along, until he learns the U.S. is giving Santa Anna's leg back to Mexico. So he steals the leg, obviously. Cotton thinks he can get a driver's license in exchange for the leg. Spoiler alert, the cops don't fall for it.
You are a worse traitor than Hank. I know how to deal with traitors.
Hank's left with no choice but to get Dee Dee back in the picture. Romance blossoms. And Dee Dee drives Cotton home. But Cotton, ever the opportunist, trades the leg for a Mexican driver's license. In the Hill family, it's not about history. It's about how much trouble you can cause over a prosthetic leg. When Chuck Mangione shows up in a Megalomart ad hawking propane, it ignites a Hank Hill-sized meltdown. Strickland Propane counters with service with a hug. But surprise, it's not enough to keep the lights on. Mr. Strickland closes shop, leaving Hank both unemployed and on a warpath against Megalomart products.
Megalomart?
Desperate for work, Hank refuses to sell steak knives and begrudgingly ends up at, you guessed it, Megalomart. Buckley promised Luann a propane gig, but of course Hank was the one who really needed it. You haven't lived until you've been scolded by the manger babies. At work, Hank bonds with other jaded veterans, ousted by big box chaos. Meanwhile, Buckley drags a propane tank by the valve, proving he's Megalomart's real safety hazard. During a chaotic Chuck Mangione concert, Hank smells trouble. Literally, as a propane leak triggers a massive explosion. Mangione's feels so good turns into feels so blown up. The episode ends with Peggy horrified, Boomhauer struggling to 911 talk his way out of the chaos, and the audience left hanging on a flaming cliffhanger.
Hey man, it's 911. I ain't here no Megalomart, man. They gonna do boom, man, there's a fire and it don't.
Diving into season 3. A devastating propane explosion at Megalomart shakes the town of Arlen to its core. Hank and Luann are caught in the disaster, with Hank narrowly escaping unharmed. Tragically, Luann's boyfriend Buckley loses his life in the blast.
Oh my God! I'm bald!
In the aftermath, Hank faces an unexpected challenge. The explosion instills a deep-seated fear of propane, a shocking setback for someone who prides himself on his expertise in the field. Peggy steps up to support him, encouraging him to face his fear. while Dale spins out his usual theories, blaming the incident on shadowy conspiracy and government interference. Luann's grief takes a physical and emotional toll. Her vulnerability shines through, offering a poignant look at her growth amidst the tragedy. Meanwhile, Hank's struggle with propane phobia puts his career and confidence to the test. As the episode unfolds, both Hank and Luann begin to confront their fears and grief in their own way. By the end, Hank makes strides towards overcoming his anxiety, while Luann begins a journey of self-discovery. In this next episode, Bobby gets a crash course in the kind of love that makes you want to cry and laugh at the same time. He's smitten by Marie, a 14-year-old girl who's got that cool, artsy vibe. Translation, she's way out of Bobby's league. As for his idea of romance, writing poems, serenading her like a hopeless, love-struck puppy, and acting like he's auditioning for a teen drama. His heart's in the right place, but his approach? Let's just say it's more awkward teenage love than Titanic.
Look, the couch. You want a kiss? Nah, I gotta go.
She's into Bobby, just not that into Bobby. So Bobby's living the dream, one where he's not actually dating a girl, but rather starring in a one-man rom-com. His reality check comes with a big old dose of, I don't feel that way. And Bobby's just left standing there like the world's saddest Cupid. Meanwhile, Hank's over there being a classic dad, clueless but secretly proud. Nothing says dad of the year like not knowing how to explain the heart-wrenching disaster of your son's first crush. In the end, Bobby learns that girls are complicated. Love is pretty weird, and hey, maybe it's time to pick up some less cringy hobbies. In this episode, Peggy's head hurts so much, she decides to pay John Redcorn a visit. Now, John Redcorn isn't just any healer. He's also the secret biological father of Joseph, Peggy's neighbor, Nancy's son. Here's the catch. Nancy's married to Dale, who thinks that Joseph is his son. So Peggy, being the sweet and totally oblivious woman that she is, walks right into this messy love triangle. Oh, and did I mention she's in for the kind of headache that's more about family secrets? John Redcorn, who's pretty much just a walking soap opera, decides to give Peggy his special treatment for her pain. It's not long before Peggy realizes that John Redcorn's magic hands are about to drop a bombshell. He's Joseph's real dad.
Your wife came to me with a headache. A real headache. Her head actually hurt.
Not Dale. Cue Peggy, who has no idea what to do with this new info, and the audience, who's left wondering if this entire neighborhood is secretly a reality show. Now Peggy has a choice. Spill the beans to Dale, or let him keep thinking that Joseph is his son. Of course, Peggy being Peggy, she spends way too much time not making a decision, leaving us in suspense as we all wait for the inevitable chaos. It's a headache, all right, just not the kind that Peggy was expecting. In this episode, we witness a surprisingly sweet but mostly bizarre storyline. Hank suddenly gets into his head that Ladybird, the family dog, needs to have puppies. Why? Well, Hank's real reason is that he and Peggy secretly want another child. But this is Hank's weirdly roundabout way of dealing with it. He's out there researching doggy fertility treatments as if his pooch is going to give him some kind of cosmic parenting insight. Meanwhile, Peggy starts feeling just a little bit jealous. Turns out, she's not a fan of Hank's newfound obsession with canine reproduction. I mean, who could blame her? At least she gave him Bobby, right? Meanwhile, Dale, ever the wild card, decides it's time to leave the world of conspiracy theory in favor of becoming a bounty hunter. Of course, true to form, his bounty hunting skills are questionable at best, as he chases down criminals with all the stealth of a stampede of buffalo. In other words, it's not going very well.
Borrowed one dog, purpose nab fugitive at 27 Whistler Terrace.
So while Hank's off trying to create a puppy dynasty and Dale's turning the neighborhood into his own personal crime scene, Peggy has to contend with a very real question. Does she want a baby, or just a normal, non-pregnant dog? Meanwhile, Dale's bounty hunting escapades wreak havoc across Arlen.
Freeze! Get!
With his lack of skill turning his pursuit of criminals into a neighborhood-wide comedy of errors. What starts as innocent sibling shenanigans quickly escalates when Bobby switches out Luann's birth control pills with candy. Cue Bobby's panic attack as he realizes that his prank might have accidentally made Luann think that she's pregnant. Luann, being a master of playing along, takes the bait, and the two cousins end up deep in wedding preparation. Crazy sentence to say out loud, but anyway. Naturally, Hank and Peggy, who have been trying to teach Bobby a lesson about responsibility, decide the best course of action is to throw a mock wedding. As Bobby walks down the aisle, heart racing and sweat dripping, he thinks that he's in too deep. But just when he's about to get hitched, Luann reveals that she knew the whole time. Spoiler, no baby, no wedding.
How come they get to be married when I never do?
Just Bobby, thoroughly embarrassed, and Hank and Peggy secretly relieved. Turns out the real prank was the whole marriage thing. Bobby learns that some pranks should just stay as pranks. Hank, in an attempt to help Luann, loans her $60. She then proceeds to spend it all in one night, of course. Hank finds out, gets her a job as a drink girl at La Grunta Hotel. Somehow, it works. Luann's rolling in tips from lecherous golfers. To thank Hank, she buys him a dolphin encounter. Yep, a ticket to swim with a dolphin named Duke. Hank's face? Pure confusion. But he reluctantly dives in, literally. At first, Duke is just kinda chillin', and Hank's like, okay, this is fine. Then out of nowhere, Duke drags Hank underwater. Turns out Duke's idea of affection is little too affectionate. Hank is horrified, and the hotel is like, oh, that's our bad, while bribing him with a bunch of free stuff.
Didn't know dolphins knew how to play golf.
Meanwhile, Luann's dealing with golfers who can't tell the difference between putting and grabbing. She keeps it to herself until she can't. Hank's like, I've been assaulted by a dolphin, and spills the beans. Bill, of course, breaks down in tears, revealing he was also violated by Duke. Talk about a weird support group. Hank's had enough. He returns the free merchandise and sees the sleazy golfer groping Luann. Hank shoves the guy into the pool and lets Duke take care of the rest. The dolphins relocated to the ocean, and Luann sends the footage to when animals attack. Now, in this next episode, Luann's beauty school dreams are on life support after her exam prep leaves a horsetail bald. Meanwhile, Hank and the guys strike a deal with Con to rescue Buckley's old sad trampoline from neglect, only to end up landscaping it for him. Luann finds the trampoline's rusty charm to be just too much, especially when she spots Buckley's carved initials and spirals into tears. But get this, that night, Buckley reappears as an angel with tiny wings and his signature megalomart smock. Naturally, the celestial visitations feature trampoline bouncing. Breakfast the next morning brings some questionable revelations.
You look positively radiant this morning. You're not pregnant, are you? Disregard.
Luann swears that she saw Buckley's angel. Peggy suspects chemical fumes, and Hank decides that angel stories are great morale boosters for the alley crew. However, when the trampoline becomes a suggestion box for divine miracles, Hank's patience absolutely snaps. He confronts Luann with the ultimate scare tactic. If you keep seeing him post-exam, he's the angel of death. This pep talk pushes her to pass beauty school, after dyeing Peggy's hair like a pro. In the end, Luann moves on, switching to community college, earning her tuition back, and saying a heartfelt goodbye to Buckley, who walks off into the afterlife with a halo, finally earning his angel credentials. Godspeed, Buckley's angel. Godspeed. Thank you, Buckley's angel, for guiding our way through to Season 4. Hank's life goes from nothing can face me to, oh, well, I'm screwed, when Con and Min leave for a week in Hawaii and leave their daughter Connie in their care. At first, Connie's like a dream guest. She clears the table, tells funny stories, and seems to get along with everybody.
My name is... What? My name is... Who? My name is Slicka Slim Shady.
But soon enough, she goes full teenager. Connie starts snapping at Bobby like she's auditioning for a role in a horror film, asking, how many cows do you people eat in a year? Before storming off to her room. The real chaos starts when Hank finds a note from Connie saying, Mr. Hill, I just got my first period. Hank panics. He doesn't even know how to talk about periods, let alone deal with the situation. He calls everybody that he knows, but only his mom answers, and that's an immediate hard no. Hank rushes Connie to the ER, expecting medical professionals to save the day, only to be told to head to Megalomart for some feminine product. Inside the store, Hank sends Connie to the aisle with the pads, but it's a disaster. Connie's overwhelmed, crying in the middle of the aisle, and Hank's just standing there completely helpless. Back at home, things get even weirder. Connie asks, how do I change one of these? And Hank looks like he's seen a ghost. Meanwhile, Peggy's dealing with her own chaos at school and is escorted off campus, while Con freaks out in Hawaii upon hearing about the situation. After some awkward dinner talk, Connie finally apologizes to Bobby. They agree that the relationship is on, as long as Bobby never has to deal with her during her period.
Every month, a woman has this time when she gets very angry.
And in the background, Dale's trash can is off on its own adventure, getting snatched by a garbage truck. Classic Dale. Hank finds himself holding a rare winning beer can, offering the chance to win $1 million by throwing a football through a target. After Luann unknowingly drinks the prize-winning beer, Hank must decide whether to take the high-stakes throw himself or to let former quarterback Don Meredith make a safer attempt for $100,000. The journey to New Orleans for the contest takes an unexpected turn. Hank and the guys accompany Bill, who quickly gets entangled in a complicated love affair involving 3 widows. While Bill navigates his romantic chaos, Hank stays focused on the big game, or at least he tries to. At the Superdome, the spotlight shifts to the big moment. Don Meredith's attempt to save the day ends in comedic disaster.
I want a do-over. I could have made that throw!
Forcing Hank to step up and take the throw himself. Though the outcome isn't what he envisioned, Hank proves his determination and resilience. Meanwhile, Bill returns to Arlen with a tangled love life and more questions than answers. But his trip is anything but boring. Hank's trying to stay cool in the most chaotic way possible. While waiting in Debbie's apartment, Gail casually lights up a joint. Whoop, Hank thought it was just a cigarette. Now he's high and panicking, thinking he might have accidentally murdered Debbie during a marijuana blackout. Meanwhile, Sheriff Mumford is on the case, and Hank's reluctant to admit that he smoked weed, and this makes him look very suspicious.
Heck, I was in prison with a guy who was doing life for a murder he didn't even remember committing, okay?
Things get even weirder when Buck and Liz plant evidence to frame Hank for the crime, and Hank, in a classic who, me moment, starts believing he might have done it. Here's the twist. Debbie's death wasn't Hank's fault. She just tripped the shotgun's hammer while trying to juggle snacks in a dumpster. Oh man, really? Yeah, I guess it's as ridiculous as it sounds.
No, I'm sorry about that whole frame up there, Tano. I was under a lot of stress.
Hank tries to clear his name. Bobby bans him from mowing the lawn as punishment for being a bad influence. It's a tough gig being a dad in this episode, but hey, at least he didn't murder anybody on purpose. Moving right along to our next episode, Peggy gets a rejection letter from Randy Travis's lawyer and somehow misinterprets it as a big old thumbs up for her songwriting. Naturally, she hijacks a church trip to Nashville and makes it all about her. From there, she annoys the entire group, insists that she's the Nashville expert, and even punches Randy Travis in the face because she thinks that he stole her song. Meanwhile, Hank's just trying to survive while Peggy takes on the country music world like a one-woman wrecking ball.
Hank, what do you do for a living?
I sell propane and propane accessories.
Things go from weird to worse when Bobby and Luann try to make nice with Brooks and Dunn, only to have them puke from eating Peggy's apple brown Betty, which they drop in manure, by the way. Hank saves Randy Travis from drowning in his own trailer because, of course, that happens. But Randy, being the country star that he is, thanks Hank in the worst way possible. Hank's done. But Peggy, well, she's still not entirely sure she wasn't wrong. She did, after all, come up with the idea for Spa Peggy and meatballs. In the end, they make up. But Hank's learned one thing. When Peggy is involved, always expect the unexpected. And possibly a minor brush with country music fame. Which leads us to Bill Doderive, is the well-meaning but perpetually unlucky neighbor who tries to find meaning in his life through misguided gestures. In this episode, Bill goes full holiday mode after a trip to the post office sparks his seasonal charity spirit. He sets up a Christmas village in his yard and plays Santa for the neighborhood, much to Hank's relief. He's not spiraling into another suicidal Christmas meltdown like before. Bill is so enchanted by the holiday magic, he keeps it going way past New Year's, even buying a giant Santa bounce house to add to the village. His new Christmas cheer catches the eye of a single mom, Marilyn, who thinks Bill's holiday spirit is a sweet, quirky gesture, until he refuses to let go of his Santa persona even as Valentine's Day looms around the corner. She quickly bounces.
Marilyn's gone.
Of course she is.
Meanwhile, Bill befriends a teenage slacker, Wally, whom he sees as a wayward waif, in need of a father figure. Everyone else knows Wally's just using him for free stuff like money, booze, and cigarettes, but Bill's blinded by his need to nurture. Things go south when Wally gives Bill a belt sander, which is quickly revealed to be stolen from Hank. Bill confronts Wally, who storms off, convinced Bill doesn't believe in him, only to get arrested for more crime. In the end, Bill manages to convince a judge to send Wally to the army instead of jail, proving Christmas miracles can still happen, even for this guy. Hank's patience is tested in this next episode when Tammy Duval, Strickland's propane's new recruit, turns every task into a disaster. First, she ruins Hank's lunch plans with Peggy, then Peggy, in true Peggy fashion, decides to tutor Tammy and let her live in the den. Spoiler alert, Tammy is not just a troubled soul, she's a sex worker. Things go sideways when Tammy gives Peggy a makeover that screams, well, escort chic. And Hank, blissfully ignorant, ends up confronting a client while wearing a feathered cowboy hat.
Allow me to, introduce myself. Alabaster Jones.
Things get even more awkward when Alabaster, Tammy's pimp, mistakes Hank for her new manager and demands Peggy as part of the deal. Hank, channeling his best tough guy persona, hands over all the money that Tammy gave him, claiming she's his hoe. Alabaster buys it, and to make matters worse, tries to steal Peggy away, thinking she's Hank's second hoe. Hank's attempt to save the day is a mess, but hey, at least he's doing it in his style, albeit a feathered hat. As for the morale of the story, don't let your wife get a makeover from a self-proclaimed stylist. Definitely don't wear feathered hats if you're not in a band. In this episode, Nancy's 40th birthday takes a dramatic turn when she considers a facelift after being replaced at the station by younger Luann. Dale, in true Gribble fashion, devises a wild plan to sue Manitoba Cigarettes, blaming second-hand smoke for Nancy's aging. To bolster his case, he awkwardly criticizes Nancy's appearance, driving her to move in with the Hills. Meanwhile, Dale's paranoia reaches new heights, as he suspects that their house is bugged by a robot fish.
I love the dress, but what's with the face?
What?
With Nancy unimpressed and his lawsuit going nowhere, Dale's antics end in a disaster. In the end, Nancy stays fabulous, and Dale stays Dale. Hank, Bill, and Boomhauer are hanging out when Dale shows up with his lawnmower for the Durndal County Mower Races. Hank doesn't think much of it, until Dale mocks him into joining, leading to a rivalry, as Dale fires up his pit crew, Hank's buddies, and taunts Hank's chances. But Hank's back problems flare up, and Peggy convinces him to see a doctor. Apparently, Hank has diminished gluteal syndrome. Yep, no butt. The doctor suggests a prosthetic, but Hank's pride is hurt. He's got no butt. Now he has to wear a fake one? After an awkward first try at the prosthetic, Hank wrecks a medical supply store, drawing stares and sarcastic remarks from the staff. At home, Hank is still struggling.
Put your fake tatas next to Hank's. We'll see who's got the bigger melons.
All right.
Peggy tricks him into a men's support group for the gluteally challenged. Oh man. Where Hank bonds with a fellow patient, Dave. The support is nice, but Hank just wants to mow in peace. Eventually, he enters the race solo, proudly sporting his diminished glutes team name on his mower. The prosthetic malfunctions, but Hank refuses to quit. The race ends with Boomhauer winning, but Hank's okay with it. He may not have a butt, but he's got determination. Meanwhile, Bobby's freaked out about the possibility of his own future butt issues, so he starts working on his glutes, just in case. Hank's not thrilled with his new gluteal reality, but he's learned to laugh it off. At least he's still got his mower, and a lot of support, whether he wants it or not.
We're here. No rear. Get used to it.
This season kicks off with Bobby trying to spice up Connie's boring slumber party, only for Shane Wassunassong and his gang to show up and bully him, literally forcing Bobby out the window like a kid in a horror movie. Shane makes Bobby eat dirt, and Hank's immediately disappointed in his son's lack of manhood. So Hank decides to toughen Bobby up with boxing classes at the YMCA. But of course, they're full. Bobby, not one to wait for a fight, signs up for a women's self-defense class instead. Because, obviously, groin kicks and shouting, "That's my purse," are the perfect way to defend yourself in high school. Bobby's new moves come in handy when Shane and his gang try to bully him again. Bobby gives Shane a swift kick to the groin, shouting, "Let go of my purse," like he's in an action movie. And the bullies scatter faster than you can say unnecessary violence. At home, Bobby's the hero, until his groin-kicking skills land him in front of Principal Moss for a different kind of lesson. Hank is very proud of Bobby, but once he hears about Bobby's groin-focused strategy, he's a little less thrilled. Peggy, meanwhile, is ready to blame Hank for sending Bobby to the YMCA in the first place. In an attempt to turn Bobby into a real boxer, Hank takes matters into his own hands and starts teaching Bobby himself. But Hank's tough love lesson goes horribly wrong when Bobby delivers a devastating groin kick to Hank, sending him to the floor faster than you can say self-inflicted humiliation. A paramedic later confirms that Hank's missing one testicle. But don't worry, it should turn up eventually.
Keep on them nuts, man. Let them testicle on there. Don't move, man.
Unable to move, Hank's power over Bobby quickly diminishes. Bobby takes full advantage, ignoring his dad's threats and playing his Game Boy. Peggy steps in for some serious tough love, noogies, and a lesson in what happens when you don't fight fair. Bobby realizes not every battle is worth winning, especially when you're fighting your own family. In this next episode, Dale Gribble is in full panic mode when he accidentally shoots his gun while telling a story, throwing his re-election campaign for president of the Arlen Gun Club off track. His rival, Mad Dog, quickly swoops in to run against him, and Dale's confidence hits rock bottom. To lift his spirits, Hank, ever the schemer, pretends to be Mr. Big, a mysterious figure from a Soldier of Fortune ad.
I'm trying to hire you, you idiot.
Who is this?
And sends Dale on a mission to pick up a briefcase. Spoiler, Dale grabs the wrong one, immediately throws sand in a stranger's eyes, and assumes that he's been roped into a drug mule operation. Classic Dale. Meanwhile, Mad Dog hosts a party to celebrate his rising popularity, but Hank, Bill, and Boomhauer decide to crash it like they're part of an undercover mission. Except they're not. Unsurprisingly, they get caught. Realizing his friends are in trouble, Dale goes to the rescue, only to get disarmed and captured himself. But not to worry, Dale is in full Dale Gribble mode and bluffs his way out by claiming the CIA is coming to save them.
My friends were just asking about my work for the CIA.
Knock it off.
A flower delivery team mistakenly backs up his claim, causing Mad Dog to believe the government is coming for him. Talk about a flowery escape plan. In the end, Dale unties his buddies and demands they re-elect him, promising to call off the fake government agents in exchange for votes. As they leave, Mad Dog's house blows up, probably because he didn't take the Dale Gribble threat seriously enough. In typical Dale fashion, he exaggerates his heroism to his gun club buddies, making himself sound like an action hero. even though the only thing that he really fought was a briefcase. Bobby's Valentine's Day gets complicated in this episode when he tries to win Connie back after breaking up, but his desperate attempts, like showing up to a party dressed as Cupid and accidentally shooting her in the eye, just make things worse. Meanwhile, Bill, stuck in his own sad singlehood, drags Bobby into a spiral of junk food and nostalgia about lost love.
Now, go across my dang old heart, top man, I played lead to you. What, man?
Do solemnly swear.
After a disastrous attempt to copy Boomhauer's charm with women, Bobby finally connects with Debbie, proving that persistence, and maybe a little desperation, can still work. Connie ditches Mozart for bluegrass in this episode, and things get wildly off-key, literally. It starts with Hank rejecting Puff the Magic Dragon because it's about a dragon. Way to ruin Bill's day. Before roping Connie into playing bluegrass with the Dale Gribble Bluegrass Experience. Even Boomhauer's banjo makes an appearance. Bobby tries to join in with a jug, Hank's stuffed jug, no less. Con, naturally, flips when he finds Connie hoedowning instead of Mozarting. Dale pepper sprays Yakov Smirnoff, paranoia level DEFCON 1. Bobby scores $20 for a joke, and Hank confiscates it, accusing Bobby of swiping it from his wallet. Poor Bobby can't catch a break. Jeez. Connie, frustrated by Hank's strict bluegrass dad act, runs off to street perform with Bobby. Their Appalachian duet, A Fiddle in a Bottle, has even Hank and Con jamming out in the end. Meanwhile, Dale and the guys rope Charlie Daniels into playing fiddle by claiming it's Connie's dying wish. Wow. Just another day in Arlen, I guess.
Connie Supernoosenpone, everyone! She's only 13!
In our next episode, Dale's vow renewal plan takes a hilariously chaotic detour when Nancy insists they invite Dale's estranged father, Bug. Why estranged? Well, Dale thinks that Bug kissed Nancy at their wedding, but the truth is, Bug wasn't into Nancy. He's about to kiss a Filipino caterer. Oops. Hank, Bill, and Boomhauer track Bug down at a gay rodeo, where Bug explains his grabbing the nearest dress defense. Oh, and he's got a boyfriend, Juan Pedro, who's livid to find out that Bug is a son. Family drama? Check.
As long as he keeps his hands off your hot body, we're cool.
Back in Arlen, Bug tries to come clean, but Dale's cluelessness turns Bug's I'm gay revelation into Dad's a secret government agent. Dale heads to the rodeo to blow Bugs' cover, but Bug's patience, in a lasso, saves the day. A public kiss with Juan Pedro finally makes things clear. Dale accepts Bug's truth and lets him attend the wedding. Dale, in peak obliviousness, decides John Redcorn must be gay, blissfully unaware of who Joseph's real dad is. It's a bright morning in Arlen, and while Hank and Peggy are still in bed, Bill's staring at the alley, drowning in self-pity. Then, out of nowhere, a beautiful jogger runs by. Bill's jaw completely drops. She notices him and even smiles. Bill's convinced that this is the moment. He rushes to tell Boomhauer, but Boomhauer's busy sleeping with the ice cream lady. Bill's ecstatic. The guys are like, yeah, sure, Bill, we totally believe you. He even records his conversation with the jogger for proof. Hank is not impressed. Just because you met a jogger doesn't mean she's your girlfriend, Bill. Later, Bill comes up with a brilliant plan. Let's dig potholes in the alley so the jogger can trip and I can save her. Of course, it backfires.
I'll help you, ma'am. I'm down.
Bill hurts himself, the jogger's fine, and Boomhauer takes all the credit. Meanwhile, Bobby thinks that he's in a relationship with the ice cream lady, but Luann quickly sets him straight. Boomhauer is a player. Bobby's heart breaks when he finds out the truth. As for Boomhauer, he's totally smitten with the jogger, and in classic Boomhauer fashion, hides his feelings. He begs his grandma for a wedding ring to propose, but the jogger's not having it. She's not interested. Boomhauer, devastated, drowns his sorrows in Barracuda and crashes into Marlene's mailbox. The next day, Boomhauer is still heartbroken. Bill, enjoying every second of his misery, laughs it off, while Hank just tries to distract him with some old stories. But Boomhauer is too deep in his feelings to care. You know, typical. Painting our way to Season 7, Dale shows up in the alley carrying a weather balloon, which Bill thinks is for his belated birthday. Hank quickly reminds Bill it was last week, making Bill wish him a happy belated birthday like it's a card from a party he didn't go to. The guys get super excited about recreating the lawn chair flight, and Hank, being the responsible guy that he is, walks into Strickland Propane to focus on the biggest propane sale of the year. Because what's a success like pushing gas tanks? Meanwhile, Bill's getting ready for his own big flight, tethered to a lawn chair by some balloons, while Dale's got a revolver in case Bill needs a little help with altitude sickness. As if Hank didn't already have enough to worry about with the sale, Bobby starts tagging along and learning sales techniques, like handing out brochures and telling customers to come back later. This is the Bobby Hill method, which Hank soon realizes is a little too successful, when Bobby starts lying about grills to make a sale. Meanwhile, Bill's getting dragged through the streets, still hanging upside down in his lawn chair like the world's most confused Santa Claus. Dale's cheering him on, oblivious to Bill's near-death experience. After a chaotic sales day where Bobby's beginner's luck leads to a couple of questionable transactions,
What do you think about the non-chrome grills?
What, the Widowmakers?
No.
Hank tries out Joe Jack's brash sales tactics, but it backfires when the customers flee in terror. By the end, Bobby learns the hard way that doing the grunt work isn't such a bad idea after all. And well, Bill, he's still stuck. This time getting beaten by kids with sticks who think that he's a piñata. Classic Arlen. Bobby Hill is in a bit of an existential crisis this episode. After losing his role in Oklahoma to a guy named Ken Hayashi, because, of course, Bobby's biggest competition is always a guy with a name like Ken Hayashi. He's convinced he is hopeless at everything. Enter Peggy, who thinks a trip to the flea market will fix him up. Hank, ever the optimist, hands Bobby a little cash and tells him to find something constructive. Bobby finds tarot cards. Not just any cards, but a 78-card Rider-Waite deck. Hank, of course, assumes that they're just playing cards. So Bobby's suddenly Ace, a nickname Hank dishes out as if he's preparing to play a round of poker with the entire neighborhood. Bobby starts giving tarot readings, and somehow Bill ends up with the Ten of Swords, a card that, in the upside-down world of tarot, means pain, affliction, tears, sadness, and desolation. Basically, it's not a good card, which honestly seems like Bill's whole vibe. Next stop, red carpet video, where Bobby meets Ward Rackley, the ultimate teen wizard. Ward's the leader of a coven, which sounds about as legit as a lemonade stand run by a kid who insists that he's a highly trained magician. He invites Bobby into his cult-like group of wizards, and Bobby, never one to turn down a chance to wear a robe, is totally in. Meanwhile, Hank's over here thinking Bobby's just playing poker with some weird teens until he catches him dancing around a fire, chanting like he's in American Horror Story.
I can't do theater. I can't do sports. If I can't drink something gross, what have I got?
Long story short, Bobby's about to drink a goblet of dog's blood for a ritual. Yep, you heard that right. But instead, he calls out his new friends as nothing but a bunch of nerds in robes. Hank, finally realizing it's all a sham, rescues Bobby, and they head home, wiser but not bloodier. Oh, and in case you're wondering, Bobby's still not sure what his thing is, but at least it's not being a blood-drinking wizard. In this next episode, a moving truck rolls up on Rainy Street, and the gang is buzzing with excitement. Bobby dreams of a new neighbor with kids who just want to veg out in front of the TV. Good luck with that, Bobby. Meanwhile, Bill's hope of a new neighbor being a single woman evaporates when the new guy turns out to be none other than washed-up ex-Dallas Cowboys player Willie Lane. Yep, that's right. Bobby's hopes of a low-key family retreat are completely dashed. And Bill's dating hopes are crushed faster than Ray Lewis crushing the Browns' offensive line back in 2000. Anyway, Willie quickly becomes the neighborhood's new fun guy, throwing loud parties and causing chaos. He cuts Con's phone line and digs up his lawn with a bunch of his buddies, treating the yard like it's a football field.
You can do it. There you go.
Hank, fed up, calls the cops, but they just laugh it off, because who can resist the charm of a Super Bowl ring? The situation escalates as Willie teaches Bobby a thing or two about dirty football moves. Things go from bad to worse when Willie rolls a car onto Hank's lawn. Hank tries again to get the police involved, but guess what? They're all too enamored with Willie's shiny ring to care. So Willie plays the blame game and convinces everybody Hank is responsible. When Willie finally punches Hank in the face, yep, it's as painful as it sounds, Hank decides that enough is enough. With a picture of Willie's Super Bowl ring imprint on Hank's face, Dale gets his hands on some solid evidence. Hank gives Willie a 2-week deadline to hit the road or face charges. Looks like Rainy Street just got a little less fun for Willie, but at least the gang won't be too shaken for too long. The next episode kicks off another wild ride in Arlen, and it all starts with Hank getting fed up with work. His customers are grumpy, his coworkers are slacking, and Hank's practically running the whole show. Meanwhile, Peggy's pumped because she's joined the Viva Los Arlentinos planning committee, and she can't stop talking about running with the Bulls. Hank's too exhausted to care, but it does give Dale the chance to plant an idea. Hank needs some testosterone to feel, well, more like a man. Cue the doctor visit. Bobby's flunking PE, and Hank thinks that hormone therapy will help jumpstart puberty. The doctor clears Bobby, but when Hank asks about testosterone therapy, the doctor drops the bomb. Hank's symptoms of irritability and stress scream irritable male syndrome, but Hank denies it and storms out. Peggy, however, doesn't waste time. She grabs the prescription from the trash, and next thing you know, Hank's breakfast has been enhanced with testosterone. At first, it seems like a miracle. Hank suddenly got the energy to argue with Dale's nonsense. Volunteer for the bull run, and even train like an Olympic athlete. But soon, puberty Hank takes over. He's moody, confrontational, and even rough with the guys. Peggy starts to regret her actions when the doctor tells her that the overdose could shrink Hank's you-know-what by 20%. To make it right, Peggy rushes home with patches to fix Hank's manhood situation, but Hank's already far too gone, both mentally and physically. As Hank gets weaker, he realizes his family's lack of integrity. So despite his shriveled ego, he refuses to back down. And as for Bobby, well, he's finally brave enough to face the boys' locker room. So in the end, Hank learns that maybe a little less testosterone and a little more honesty goes a long way. Hank's Christmas spirit takes a detour when his mom, Tilly, inherits a whole lot of antique furniture. But here's the kicker. It's in Arlen, and Tilly lives in Arizona. Hank, being the dutiful son, decides to haul all that precious furniture across state lines in an 18-wheeler. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, not when Bill, Dale, and Boomhauer decide they're not going to miss out on this trip, and they stow away in the back. Hank's trying to teach Bobby the ropes of truck driving, while the gang in the back is treating his moving job like a clearance sale at a furniture store. Things get a little too hot to handle when the temperature inside the truck starts to rise. And no, it's not because of Hank's killer driving skills. It's just the truck's hull turning into an oven.
Hank, for God's sakes, let us out!
Bobby and Hank stop at a truck stop, ready to get some relief, but Hank's not recognized as a real trucker, just a guy with a truck. That's an insult that Hank can't ignore. Meanwhile, Bill, Dale, and Boomhauer manage to get themselves half naked and dehydrated and somehow still cause trouble by blowing open the back of the truck. But the chaos doesn't stop there. Hank's forced to drive all night to make up for lost time.
Shut it!
Running on fumes and determination alone. Or when they get stuck on a mountain road with a dead battery, Hank thinks that all is lost. But in true Hank fashion, he pulls a solution out of thin air, thanks to a little kerosene and some classic trucker ingenuity. The rig is back on the road, and Hank's a hero to his fellow truckers who are finally starting to recognize him for the true road warrior that he is. Back in Arlen, Peggy's still trying to make her Christmas song a hit, but it's all a little too much when it gets mistaken for a missing persons report. In this next episode, Hank Hill's life takes an unexpected detour into the world of wealth and excess, all thanks to a little miscommunication and Bobby's wild imagination. It all starts innocently enough when Bobby overhears that Hank gets a $1,000 bonus and mistakes it for Hank's daily paycheck. Add in a lockbox marked oil receipts, and Bobby's mind jumps to conclusions. Hank's secretly a rich oil tycoon, living large and hoarding his fortune. Bobby, eager to live the high life, tells Joseph and Connie that Hank's got a fortune to spare. And soon, the rumor spreads like wildfire through Rainy Street. Hank, blissfully unaware, is completely baffled by all the sudden requests for money. From Dale asking him to buy a ratchet set, to Bobby suggesting a luxurious Grand Canyon getaway for Ladybird. Hank's just trying to teach Bobby the value of $1, but every turn seemed to confirm Bobby's misunderstanding. Even Bill complains Hank isn't treating him to beers, and Bobby, in an attempt to get a taste of the riches that he believes he's owed, swipes Hank's emergency credit card and goes on a spree at the mall. Of course, Hank soon catches wind of the credit card activity and tracks Bobby down, only to discover that his son's been living it up with Joseph and Connie, thinking he's part of the elite 1%. Hank has to bring Bobby down to earth with a reality check, showing him the family finances and how their true wealth is a solid work ethic, not extravagant shopping sprees. The jet ski Bobby bought on a whim becomes the final lesson in this comedic journey. Hank, finally having enough of the bratty rich kid attitude, refuses to sell it to a pompous little jerk. Instead, he and Bobby enjoy a ride together, teaching Bobby that hard work and the value of $1 are more important than any amount of flashy toys or rumors. When Dale's a match to donate a kidney to NHRA driver John Force, Hank convinces him to face his hospital phobia. Dale agrees, but only if Hank spends a day as him, paranoia and all. Hank endures termite inspections and talker runs, but a twist emerges. John Force doesn't need the kidney. Instead, Hank donates it to a sick boy.
Nancy, what's Red Corn doing in our shower?
Dashing Dale's dreams of heroism. Meanwhile, Peggy seizes control of Tom Landry Middle School's PA system, coaching Bobby to turn dull announcements into a chaotic morning zoo show. Dale fumes over his lost kidney fame, while Peggy finds glory in loud leadership. In this chaotic episode, Con takes a sharp turn from his usual uptight self to embrace his redneck roots, thanks to a midlife crisis induced by a guy named Elvin Mackleston. After Connie gets rejected by Rice University, Con spirals into a personal meltdown. As for his solution, just ditch his high-pressure job, buy a Chevy El Camino, and start living life like a redneck, complete with a fish sword fighting hobby. Meanwhile, his wife Min is gradually seduced by this carefree lifestyle, ditching her aspirations for tube tops and late-night street races.
Connie! Look at this file cabinet they're throwing out at the office!
As Hank and Peggy watch in horror, Con and Min turn their house into a junkyard. pushing the neighborhood's property values into the red. Abby Holliday, the realtor who once flattered Hank on his home's value, breaks the news. If Con's transformation isn't stopped, they're all going to be evicted. Hank, ever the neighborly Samaritan, tries to intervene, but Con's new redneck buddies, including Elvin and Mud Dauber, are having none of it. The chaos reaches a climax when Con ends up in an underground fight club facing off against a lumbering giant. In an epiphany about his life choices, Con realizes his daughter Connie's hard work and persistence are what really matter, not living the dream of being an aimless redneck. When Connie eventually gets accepted to Stanford, it's a redemption story not just for her, but for Con, who now has a whole new sense of pride, not in his El Camino, but in his daughter's success. Which takes us to Season 9, as the Hill family trade suburban Texas for the wide-open pastures of Montana, and things get hilariously awkward. Peggy's estranged mother, Maddie, invites them to her ranch, but this isn't exactly a warm family reunion. Maddie quickly resumes her lifelong hobby, criticizing Peggy. Poor Peggy can't catch a break. Even after helping deliver a calf, Maddie still finds a way to make her feel 2 inches tall. Meanwhile, Hank, ever the Texas traditionalist, gets forced into renting a Range Rover instead of a proper pickup truck, making him the butt of jokes from ranch hands. While Hank tries to prove his worth, Bobby befriends a horse named Tennessee, finally finding his cowboy spirit after whining about boredom the entire trip.
So how's it going with your mom?
We're losing the ranch.
What?
Mm-hmm.
The plot thickens when Henry Winkler, the famous Hollywood actor who's purchased the neighboring property, won't allow the Platters to use a historic cattle trail. Winkler's fishing spot is sacred to him, and he won't budge, no matter how much Hank tries to reason with him. This forces Peggy to go full legal scholar, digging up an old ordinance that lets the Platters herd cattle through town if their trail is blocked. In comes the chaos, as cows stampede through a trendy Montana main street, leaving yuppies and sports cars in their wake. Despite Peggy's efforts to save the ranch, her mother remains as frosty as ever. But in true King of the Hill fashion, the episode ends on a heartwarming note. Bobby, on horseback, watches a glorious Montana sunset, reminding Hank and Peggy that sometimes family moments shine brighter than approval. Also, Henry Winkler and Hank patch things up in a PSA about fishing. Kinda cool. In this episode, the first to be Hill, Cotton's tendency for chaos strikes again. After inheriting $10,000 from his late war buddy Topsy, Cotton decides the best way to honor his friend is by impulsively buying a Mexican timeshare. Naturally, he drags Bill along, who, true to form, gets swept up in Cotton's antics. Enter O'Kelly, the slick salesman who convinces Cotton this deal is the American dream.
Leave it to me.
South of the border. Minor detail, Americans can't actually own land in Mexico, but Cotton's too busy throwing cash around to care. Meanwhile, in Arlen, the Hill family and Dale are on a mission of their own, finding a pool to cool off. What starts as a simple quest turns into a comedy of errors, with Dale's conspiracies, Peggy's determination, and Bobby's internal confusion leading the way. Back in Mexico, Bill suffers through Cotton's shenanigans, questioning why he agreed to this vacation.
I was about to lose my job and my wife.
Save it, Jim. He's in the bag.
Great. Signed here.
In this episode, Dale Gribble goes from paranoid conspiracy theorist to America's loudest cheerleader. Why? A rereading of the Warren Commission report convinces him that maybe, just maybe, the government's explanation of JFK's assassination was actually accurate. This revelation sends Dale into a full-blown patriotic frenzy, swapping tinfoil hats for red, white, and blue banners. His newfound loyalty to Uncle Sam is, of course, just as extreme and annoying as his usual distrust. Meanwhile, Hank Hill faces a bureaucratic nightmare when he discovers his driver's license lists his gender as female.
If you really were a woman, that would make you and Mom lesbian.
Naturally, Hank's efforts to correct this mistake involve wrestling with unhelpful government employees, endless forms, and the agonizing inefficiency of red tape. For a man who prides himself on order and correctness, it's a slow descent into frustration. As Dale enthusiastically embraces his pro-government stance, the irony of Hank's struggle with that very system creates a comedic contrast. Dale's over-the-top patriotism, complete with impromptu oaths to the flag, is a constant source of irritation for his friends, while Hank's ordeal is a relatable tale of modern-day bureaucracy gone wrong. Franz Kafka is truly rolling in his grave.
Sir, if you...
I know the chain of command, starting with your supervisor, Franklin Thomas.
In this episode, Hank's plan for a smooth vacation gets upended when he decides to join a military pet foster program. Inspired by Bill's care for a soldier dog, Hank signs up, expecting a loyal canine companion named Duke. However, much to his shock, Duke turns out to be a misbehaving cat. Hank, already skeptical of cats, is pushed to the limit as Duke disrupts the household, scratching furniture, defecating in Hank's shoes, and even ruining family dinner. Despite these antics, Hank takes his duties very seriously, going as far as purchasing overpriced specialty cat food and enduring mounting vet bills. Dr. Leslie, Duke's preferred vet, insists on costly treatment.
Okay, that's going to be $543.
What?
Further straining the family's vacation budget. What starts as a patriotic gesture becomes a frustrating spiral, as Peggy and Bobby grow resentful of Duke's impact on their trip plans. Determined to fulfill his commitment, Hank discovers that Dr. Leslie's so-called advanced veterinary services are outdated and overpriced. Armed with this knowledge, Hank confronts the vet, demanding honesty and the release form needed to send Duke back to his soldier.
Now, hold on a minute. That machine would bankrupt me. I've got to draw the line somewhere.
With the paperwork signed, the Hills finally part ways with Duke. Though their vacation plans are reduced to a modest barbecue stop, the family finds solace in enjoying each other's company. Meanwhile, Bill says goodbye to Buster, the dog that he cared for, and gets a special ride back home on a military jet. Hank's journey with Duke underscores his enduring commitment to doing the right thing, even when it doesn't go as planned, a hallmark of his character. And now, on to the next crazy thing, aka Season 10. Chaos kicks into high gear when Buck Strickland ropes in the cast of American Chopper to help Strickland Propane outshine Thatherton Fuels.
Looks like we owe you $3.
But there's a slight hiccup. The Toidle crew forgot the actual motorcycle. Fans expecting a roaring good time are left revving their own engines, leading to a full-on riot that even Buck can't charm his way out of. As the dust settles, Hank steps in, hoping to restore order with his trademark sensible approach. He advises Buck and the other propane honchos to stop the price war and focus on professional business practice. Unfortunately, this group of good old boys misinterpret Hank's advice as, let's illegally fix prices. I mean, what could go wrong? Well, just about everything could go wrong. Soon enough, Hank finds himself accused of masterminding the price-fixing scheme. Enter Commissioner Evers, who offers Hank a deal. Wear a wire and record the culprits or face jail time. Reluctantly, Hank agrees, setting the stage for one of the most awkward undercover gigs in Arlen history. With the Toidles riding to the rescue on their belatedly delivered bikes, Hank cleverly uses the roar of motorcycle engines to clue in the propane dealers without tipping off Commissioner Evers. The sounds of revving engines drowns out the wiretapping revelation, allowing the propane kings to backpedal their shady dealings. Order is restored, and competition resumes the good old-fashioned way, without the illegal shortcuts. This season finale episode begins with Lucky Kleinschmidt deciding it's time to turn his life around, or at least slightly improve it by earning his GED. He finally wants to prove he's responsible enough to propose to Luann, so naturally he enlists Peggy, Arlen's most confident and self-proclaimed best educator, to help him study. Peggy reluctantly agrees, but her enthusiasm for teaching is overshadowed by her desire to keep Lucky far away from Luann. Peggy's doubts about Lucky's suitability as a partner intensify during their study sessions, where his lack of formal education and casual demeanor challenge her patience. Despite her misgivings, Lucky makes an earnest effort, showing that while he might not know algebra, his heart is in the right place. Things take a dramatic turn when Peggy learns that Luann is pregnant with Lucky's child. The episode wraps up with Peggy reluctantly accepting that Lucky, flaws and all, might actually be the right person for Luann. It's a bittersweet moment of growth, reminding viewers that love often thrives in unexpected places, even in a trailer park.
Is that gun cocked? It's gotta be cocked.
I'm not gonna cock it.
When Bill has an army physical looming, panic sets in. He's in terrible shape and skating by on pure treadmill malfunction luck. Enter Hank and the gang, ready to whip him into shape. They pool their resources to build a makeshift gym in the alley, but Bill's progress is painfully slow. Until he meets Dirk, a hulking bodybuilder with zero chill and a penchant for pumping iron. Dirk, banned from every gym for being too ripped, takes over Bill's workouts, bringing along his equally jacked crew, Coach and Gorilla. The trio turn Bill's gym into their posing ground, scaring off everybody else but transforming Bill into a budding muscle machine. Soon, Bill's newfound confidence swells into arrogance, straining his relationships with Hank and the neighborhood. Things come to a head at a barbecue when Bill realizes that he's more isolated than ever, but his ego won't let him back down. He pushes himself too hard, leading to a cringe-worthy injury that lands him in a world of hurt. Hank steps in, outwitting the bodybuilders by sparking an epic flex-off that distracts them long enough to rescue Bill.
Your internal systems became external.
At the doctor's office, Bill learns that he's out of commission for 6 months. Muscle dreams completely postponed. In the end, Hank and Bill mend fences, taking baby steps, literally, back to fitness with a triumphant walk to the mailbox. In this episode, Lucky and Luann plan their wedding, but there's one tiny problem. Lucky's settlement money is nearly gone, and Luann has champagne dreams on a beer budget. Determined to make her happy, Lucky takes a pest control job with Dale. Armed with a gas mask and bug spray, things are looking, well, pretty buggy. Naturally, a mock sword fight with Dale ends with Lucky flat on his back.
Why do my boyfriends always die?
And an idea for a lawsuit brewing. When Lucky's lawyer, Edward Johnson, spins legal mumbo-jumbo to blame Hank for referring Lucky to Dale, a lawsuit against Strickland Propane is born. Hank is livid, Lucky's miserable, and Dale somehow is still having fun. To wreck the case, the gang fakes a video of Lucky miraculously cured and golfing like a champ.
Cut.
Ow!
Johnson buys it, but Lucky's struggle to pick up a tire gauge nearly blows it. Thinking fast, Dale knocks Lucky down in a dramatic bug attack, and Hank threatens to countersue. Johnson forks over $53,000 faster than you can say ambulance chaser. Lucky convinces Luann to settle for a simple wedding and a new house, sweetening the deal with baby clothes. They marry in the Hills yard, and Hank gives them a honeymoon trip. Happy endings? Check. Beers in the alley? Double check. Yep. And that leads us straight into the next part, where Hank's dream of building a new shed turns into a nightmare when Cotton shows up, kicks down a wall, and starts wreaking havoc. Later, Cotton offers to babysit Bobby, but refuses to reheat lasagna because men don't need ovens. Naturally, he drives Bobby to a hibachi restaurant without glasses or a license, using a mop to hit the pedals. At dinner, Cotton picks a fight with the chef, chokes on shrimp, and faceplants onto the grill. Oh my god. The chaos ends with Cotton in the hospital, sporting burns, a broken hip, and a shrimp allergy that's determined to finish him off. Hank buries himself in shed construction to avoid seeing Cotton, but guilt, and Dale's promise to demolish the shed, eventually nudges him to visit. Cotton softens, briefly, before Hank's attempt to say "I love you" sparks a tirade and a near-death collapse.
You loves me?
Dad?
What kind of man tells another man he loves him?
Peggy steps in, delivers some home truths, and Cotton finally kicks the bucket, after mocking her one last time. Back home, Hank dedicates the shed to Cotton's memory, only for Dale to blow it up, as per Cotton's wish. Moral of the story, never underestimate Cotton or Dale's commitment to chaos. In this episode, Bobby Hill is gearing up for the homecoming dance, but things aren't going as smoothly as he'd hoped. While Joseph manages to score a better-than-nothing date, Bobby faces one rejection after another. That is, until a trio of older girls, Bethany, Decca, and Terry, spot Bobby and decide he's the perfect project. These girls from the advanced class flirt with Bobby, and before he knows it, he's eating out of their hands. Literally. They convince him to go to the mall, and later agree to be his dates for the dance. At first, Bobby is thrilled with the attention, but Hank is suspicious, especially when he hears that Bobby's hanging out with these college prep girls.
In the future, both men and women will visit the gynecologist, but only women will be getting their money's worth.
Hank's fear grows when Bobby returns from a mall date with a makeover and a new sense of style, just hours before the dance. Concerned Bobby's being turned into a girl, Hank grounds him, but Bobby sneaks out to meet the girls anyway. Things take a turn when Bobby arrives under the football field bleachers expecting a fun party, only to realize that it's not all that it cracked up to be. The girls reveal they like him, but not in a romantic way. He's more of a cute, non-threatening stuffed animal. Heartbroken, Bobby walks away, only for Hank to find him and share a moment of fatherly wisdom. Hank tells Bobby that one day, a girl will appreciate him. But Bobby, a bit more jaded, hopes she doesn't keep him waiting too long. Classic Bobby. Meanwhile, Hank and the guys get into their own mischief, building an ultimate homeless guy shopping cart after being inspired by a local man named Spongy. However, their creation is rejected by Spongy, who prefers to live the simple life. And that brings us to the series finale. Hank and Bobby's awkward steakhouse dinner takes a wild turn when Bobby casually roasts their steaks, literally and figuratively. Turns out he's a meat genius. This revelation earns up a spot on the Heimlich County Junior College meat examination team. Hank's chest swells with pride. Finally, Bobby has inherited his love of beef. Bobby shines, but at the regionals, a tiny mistake cost them first place, and the team's faith in him crumbles like an overcooked brisket.
I'm ready to stop learning about beef and start eating it.
At dinner, Bobby discovers his teammates are vegetarians. Worse, they're willing to sabotage the competition. Fed up, Bobby quits. But Hank, ever the beef believer, insists that Bobby ride to state. Cue the hijinks. A rival team hijacks their bus and strains them in a creek. Meanwhile, Peggy's at home, obliviously grilling a surprise gift for Bobby. A mini propane grill that might as well be a love letter from Hank. Inspired, Bobby returns to state solo, ready to prove himself. Just as the pressure is sizzling, Hank and the team roll in, thanks to Dale, Bill, and Boomhauer's rescue. After Hank gives a pep talk that's pure USDA prime dad, Bobby steps up and spots a flaw in a steak no one else could. HCJC wins, and Bobby's the hero. The finale closes with a backyard barbecue where everybody's just vibing out.
You're 3 grades ahead already. Take the night off.
Even Boomhauer's secret Texas Ranger badge makes an appearance. Bobby picks up the last steak and quips, "This is the last one." Hank, in his ever deadly wisdom, replies, "You'll be grilling your whole life, and all is well in Arlen." And with that, we wrap up King of the Hill. What a ride. From Hank's constant battle to keep the propane empire alive to Bobby's journey to find himself, it's been a wild trip through Arlen. Let's not forget the quirky cast of characters who've kept us laughing, cringing, and questioning the logic of their decisions. Dale. But now, as we say goodbye to the series, or do we? Yep, that's right. While the original show may have ended with Hank and Bobby finding their common ground over a grill, King of the Hill's coming back in 2025. That's right, after years of fans asking for it. The show will be making its revival with new episodes to bring back all the classic moments that we missed. So don't go crying into your last steak just yet. We've got more Arlen adventures to look forward to. I mean, if anybody can make us care about the most ordinary, everyday moments in small town life, it's these guys. So what do you think? Are you excited about the revival? And of course, what's your favorite King of the Hill moment? Just drop it in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on all of our latest recaps. Let us know what other shows or movies you'd like for us to tackle next. See ya!